Good day, folks. This is your hillbilly historian coming to you from the hills of East Tennessee with some information you will not find in your high school or college history books. Today I want to talk about the truth about Abraham Lincoln. Now, thank God there's some revisionist historians out there that do not come out of the American Historical Association that have been publishing books for the last 25 years, maybe a little longer, about the truth of Abraham Lincoln. But even some of them really don't give the full truth of Abe Lincoln. Now, my opinion of Abraham Lincoln is that he was the world's first Pol Pot, one of the most evil men to ever live in Western civilization. He was not raised in the academic curriculum of the time. He had no formal education whatsoever. His mother taught him to read, and he read that which was available to him. He got no theological training, no training in ethics or morals. He was just an absolute evil man. That after he was assassinated, historians came to his defense. They even make up stuff that he said that was supposed to be great quotes and all that. They tell more lies about him than any other president we've got or ever had. Abe Lincoln, like I say, had no formal education, but he was trained in the law, and he was wise enough to use that law to become one of the highest paid railroad lawyers in the United States. And he entered into politics and could work that out pretty good. But he was busted from captain to private because he and his militia were committing a massacre on an unarmed Indian tribe of elderly men, women, and children. He was just evil man, and he always blamed his militia for that massacre. He would never face up to his responsibility that he was the commander and he ordered it done. But he had a criminal military. If you read the diaries of locals around Gettysburg in Northern Virginia at the time of the Battle of Gettysburg, you will find that people were more frightened of the Union regiments than they were of the Southern regiments. They knew Southerners would come in their yards and steal a chicken or two, and if they were running free. But the Union soldiers would kick down their doors, come in their homes, steal everything they could get their hands on. Rape the women. Union soldiers were unbelievable. And all you got to do is look at the history books. Even at the Battle of Gettysburg, the Southerners did not burn Gettysburg. They did not set one single residence on fire. The Union Army burnt everything in the South. I mean, Sheridan even bragged about the fact that burning the Shenandoah Valley, he was going to fix it so that if a crow flew across Shenandoah Valley, it'd have to pack a lunch. Sherman tried to destroy everything in Georgia, everything they came upon. If they couldn't take the cattle, the livestock with them, they killed it on the spot. If they couldn't take the crops with them, they burned the barns and the crops and the homes. It was just absolutely horrible. And look at all the capitals the Union burned: Nashville, uh, Atlanta, Jackson, Columbia. They burned every capital they encountered. And they burned a lot of small towns and cities all across the South. They were criminal and they would steal everything. The Union Army completely depopulated 5 counties in Missouri. I'm talking total depopulation, 5 counties. Something like 100,000 people made totally homeless and hit the roads as refugees looking for friends and relatives to move in with. And you see in the movies and the popular literature and everything that Quantrill was a bad guy. Quantrill burnt one town, Lawrenceville, Kansas. And he's made out to be this really, really bad guy. But you never hear about General James Lane, Union general who was stationed in Kansas, and he raided Missouri. He's the one that depopulated 5 counties, stole everything in those 5 counties. He even had a minister went with him that stole all the pews and podiums and stained glass and everything from every church he came across. One of his officers wrote to his brother in Massachusetts and "Get your butt down here. We're getting rich off Missouri." And you never saw anything like that with Quantrill or his men. James Lane burned town after town after town in Missouri. He'd steal everything and then set what was left on fire. Amazing cruelty and evil outlaws the entire Union Army. In fact, Abraham Lincoln got a man by the name of Lieberman, who was an escapee from the 1848 Marxist revolutions in Europe, when those revolutions failed and they had to run for their lives. Lieberman, who was trained in the law, came to New England and started to practice, and Lincoln hired him to write a war code, a code of ethics for fighting a war, and basically had him write it in such a way that his Union Army would not be breaking any laws or regulations. So there was a code before the Civil War, but Lincoln had to write another one because his people just simply broke too many laws. Now, it was absolutely terrible that Lincoln did all this. He was evil. He was an evil man. Totally evil. And it just absolutely terrible that he did all this, and then would change the laws to protect himself. And it was like he finally found an officer in Grant who was evil enough to not care how many men he lost or anything. He was just going to keep fighting and fighting. In fact, Grant was referred to by the Northern press as the Butcher, because he just he didn't care about the lives of his men. He was just going to keep pushing Lee until he wore Lee down, and that's what he did. And they burned another capital there in Virginia. Richmond, Virginia was burned to the ground. It was, if you look at some of the old Civil War photographs that were taken of southern capitals after the Union Army had been there. They were similar to the pictures of cities in Germany after World War II, the way we bombed them, bombed civilians and everything. There's a lot of evil in the Union military. In fact, after the Civil War, Sheridan became an observer on Bismarck's staff during the 1870 Franco-German War, and he taught the Germans how to be evil towards civilians. And he'd tell them, said, now this is the way we did the Southerners. You know, when you go into a town, you steal everything, you leave the populace hungry, nothing to eat, don't leave anything behind, burn what you don't steal. He taught the Germans how to do that. He taught the Germans to be evil. And some of that evil might have led to the unbelievable evil that took place in the 1930s and 40s under Nazi control. It's evil can be learned. It can be taught and it can be learned. And Lincoln, as the world's first Pol Pot, gave us lessons in pure evil. Over 1 million Americans had to die because of that Lincoln's war against the South. And you know, it wasn't about slavery. He never mentioned slavery until somebody told him he could win over European countries by freeing the slaves, and he came out with that Emancipation Proclamation. And even Lincoln said, you know, I freed the slaves where I have no authority, and I haven't freed a thing where I do have the authority. So he knew it was a propaganda thing, the Emancipation Proclamation. But one of the results of the war was that the slaves were freed, but something like 30 countries in Europe freed slaves without firing a shot. And the Southerners were close to freeing slaves, but a Yankee invented cotton gin, which made cotton profitable overnight. Highly profitable, because they didn't have to sit around all day picking the seeds out of the cotton. And so cotton became very profitable, and slavery became profitable, and that postponed the freeing of the slaves. Plus, another thing that worked against the freeing of the slaves was this black guy in Haiti that had a French name, Toulot, who murdered. He was a Nigerian, dark skin, like the Nigerians, and he murdered everybody that had a lighter skin than he had. The whites and the mixed race blacks who were a lighter skin, he murdered everybody. And it threw a terror throughout the Western Hemisphere of how evil blacks can be when set free. And so they were extremely frightened of free blacks. And then that one slave there, I think in South Carolina, that killed a bunch of whites, they scared Southerners against setting blacks free. They were afraid they would just terrorize whites. But anyway, Lincoln was responsible for bringing evil to North America and the United States. And he was probably the most evil president we've ever had. He was a horrible man. And there's books published that he was not Frederick Douglass himself said Lincoln is not a friend of the Negro race. And Lincoln never really did anything for blacks. He was an abject, evil person. He didn't do anything. And he had a plan to round up all the blacks and ship them back to Africa. Of course, his assassination put a stop to that. But he was laying the groundwork for moving them all back to Africa. And Union Army would tell blacks not to follow their army, to wait in that field right there, and Massa Lincoln will be here with food and shelter and money to take care of you. You just sit right there and wait. Well, a lot of blacks became wise to that, and they crossed the Mississippi River over into what was known as Indian Territory. And in fact, in the Oklahoma area, there was something like 30-something all black towns where blacks went, took care of themselves. You know, instead of waiting on Massa Lincoln to come and give them stuff for free, they went over into Indian Territory, created their own towns, and became independent, providing their own food, their own sustenance, their own defense. In fact, in the early 1930s, when bank robbery became real popular, you never seen these bank robbers go into Oklahoma and try to rob one of these all-black towns, because they kept rifles behind every counter in every store, and the time whites came to town, they all got their rifles and checked these whites out. And I think Pretty Boy Floyd and a buddy of his, by the name of Tex, and their malls, the four of them tried to rob one of these all-black town banks. And Tex got shot to pieces. His mall got shot to pieces, both killed. And Pretty Boy Floyd didn't get a scratch, but his mall got wounded. But they did get out of town with their lives. You just didn't rob a bank in an all-black town them days. They would shoot your butts off. And that's the way America became strong and wealthy, was through independence and a free marketplace. But Abraham Lincoln was an evil man, had no training whatsoever in theological ethics or the Judeo-Christian theology. He read the Bible a lot, but he gleaned from it only those quotations which would benefit himself and not those which would benefit mankind. He was the world's first Pol Pot, an evil maggot of a man. And this is your hillbilly historian, bringing you the reality of history that you won't find in your high school history books. And from the hills of Appalachia, hillbilly historian signing off.